pleasure to welcome to the show. It's Matt Sefick, not only a Division I goalie, but also a guest poster on the Lax Goalie Rat blog. Wrote an awesome blog about day in the life of a D1 athlete at a small school. Matt, welcome to the show.
Super excited to be here. I've been following you and this platform for a while now. I mean, I wrote that post back in 2018, I want to say, because it was like the fall of my senior season. So 2018. It's been a few years I've been following along. It's been cool to see just how much bigger you've gotten in those years. Really starting to explode now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Published June 25th, 2018. So 4 years ago. And yeah, it's been a run. We've been dedicating a lot to the goalie position, and here we are. It's been growing, and it's awesome to see the goalie position get so much love now. So I'd love to hear the story of how you first started being a goalie, your first save, if you remember that.
Oh yeah. I think so. Growing up in like North Jersey in Morris County, it's a pretty solid lacrosse area. We got a lot of good schools. You got Del Barton, you got Chatham, Mountain Lakes, all those schools. So definitely lacrosse is a pretty big part of the area that I'm from. And I feel like I had a pretty typical goalie story in that you see a lot of goalies are, the youngest sibling, because I was one of 3 boys. And it was, if I wanted to play with my brothers in the backyard, they were like, you could play with us, but you're getting in net. And so that's how I got stuck in there at a young age, and just kind of had a knack for it, I guess. And, I'm not the fastest person in the world, and never was. So being in net where I didn't have to run around too much was a perfect position for me to be in. And then, like, being a youngest brother, another thing too, is one of those situations where didn't have a goalie on the team, and I was the one willing to step up and get in there. And I'm sure a lot of the younger goalies could identify with that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
They ended up there.
Yeah, I did one post of like, there's only 3 reasons you become a goalie, and like one of them is your older sibling wants somebody to shoot on. So you were definitely in that camp. Now, did they teach you anything, or is it just like, Matt, get in there, like here's a knee pad?
Ooh, teaching, I think, I guess in terms of learning, I've always been more of a trial by fire kind of guy. You get in there and you figure it out along the way. It wasn't a whole lot of technical teaching from them, I guess. It was just a lot of let's see what you can do. I do remember, with clearing, they did help me with clearing a lot, just learning how to, when you're younger and you got that bigger stick, it could be a little goofy. So yeah, that was a big help for them, being willing to kind of run around in the backyard and be a target for me to hit. But yeah, big trial by fire. And then I had some great goalie coaches, growing up, that I got to work with and to kind of develop with, which was super nice. And a big part of them was just, the local high school goalies that my brothers would play with. They kind of took me under their wing and taught me some things. So big shout outs to them as well.
Yeah. What did they teach you? Or what, like, said another way, if you were going to coach a young goalie who's just getting started, what do you think are like the 2 or 3 things that you're going to teach them in session number 1?
I think a lot of it comes down to getting that stance sort of implemented as early as possible. You want to really learn how to hold the stick, because it's a little awkward. And I think what you see with a lot of young goalies is it's almost that like timidness of your stick is almost covering your face sometimes. And you want to kind of get rid of that, because if you're covering your face with your stick, you're just taking away area that you're kind of covering as a goalie to be safe. So when I work with really young goalies, a lot of it is sort of repetition, just seeing the ball, getting a feel for, what it's like to actually make a save. Figuring that out, getting that sort of muscle memory, getting the stance down. And then the earlier you kind of start to, there's always going to be fear. Fear is going to be there at every level if you can just kind of get adjusted to that. And so, I'm a big proponent of using like tennis balls. I love using tennis balls with younger goalies. I know it kind of goes back and forth. I'm like, oh, is this real? You want to use real balls, get them used to that. I love tennis balls with young goalies. I use them all throughout college. I think that it's something like, you don't always need to be getting hit and having painful bruises. If you can get something out of just the sort of the hand-eye coordination, the reaction, that's going to be helpful. So getting that stance down, getting that sort of just the feel for the position. That's what it's all about when you're younger, and falling in love with it, honestly. When you're young, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is learning how to fall in love with the position. Because it's a great position. I loved it. I never regretted my decision a day in my life, because while it can hurt and there's a lot of pressure, it's such a unique position, and there's so many pros that come with it, that you're kind of on an island, and I like that. And if you can kind of get that mental side of it, and learning how to love to play, it's going to help you out in the long run.
Yeah. I think that's where the tennis balls come into play too, is because, if you take one off the shin, like you're not really going to love this position if you're just getting boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, you're getting beat up. And it happens, right? So you got to get used to it, and you got to learn to love it. But like at the very beginning, using those tennis balls is very important. I mean, and I can, I continue to preach that to this day. If you're just doing a training session with a goalie, you might as well use tennis balls, or there's like little soft lacrosse balls, the Swax Lax balls, or like squishy ones. And yeah, stance, and then just, learning to overcome that fear. So often, like when you see a very young goalie, we're talking about like, 8, 9 years old, jump in there, like instead of, going right to the shot, their hands kind of go, but they're like, their body goes away, right? Because they're scared of that shot. That's the natural human instinct. You got to kind of train that out, right?
And listen, I think any goalie be lying to say that fear just completely goes away ever. That's always going to be there. It is. It's a human reaction. Goalies in college, like it's still not necessarily the most enjoyable thing in the world to get a 95-mile-an-hour shot coming right for your face, but it's part of the game, and you kind of learn to live with it. And so you were having a little poll the other day about which place hurts the most. I personally, I disagreed. I'm a big, like, I think bicep and shoulder, those were always the worst ones for me. You take something like dead to the shoulder, right to the bicep. Those ones are tough. I mean, obviously, hitting in the groin is never fun, but I was voting for the bicep one every single time.
Dude, the groin won. This is to me is like the most phenomenal upset in the history of sports. I don't know. I don't know what's going on out there. Are these kids not wearing like good groin protectors, good cups? Because to me, shoulder let those ones stuck with you for like 2 weeks. You'd be like, oh, that's right, I got hit in the shoulder 2 weeks ago.
And and I feel like that's the other one too, is like you get hit in the shoulder, because people also don't really like recognize, like a shooter won't recognize how much that one hurts. You get hit in the groin, everyone knows, like, oh man, like that one's tough. But you get hit in the shoulder, like, oh, it's whatever. Like, no, that's the spot. That's the spot.
Yeah, and that one, and I calf, to me, if you got hit, like, because they're like real small muscles, right? So you get hit right in the muscle, and it just like tenses up.
Tightens up on you. Yeah, that one just tightens up on you.
And the worst thing about that one, about the calf, is a lot of times, and you can say the same thing about thigh. A lot of times when you get hit there, the ball still goes in, and that is the worst.
That is definitely the worst. Yes, there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah. That's funny. So what to you would you say is your favorite part about being a lacrosse goalie?
I kind of touched on it before. Like, I love that idea of like sort of being on an island. Every other position, like, yes, like you work with the defense, obviously. You're a part of that defense, but also in a way, like, you're kind of just your own person out there. A lot of it comes on, you're kind of the unsung hero of the game. It's almost like being a kicker, kind of. People sort of take you for granted a little bit when you're just making the saves, if the kicker's just hitting it, but then sometimes those soft ones go in and people get on you a little bit. And I kind of like that challenge of it, that you really have kind of the game in your hand in a lot of ways. Like more so than probably any position on the field. Like, that game is really in your hand, and I feel like that pressure can either kind of get to you, or it can sort of build you up, and just it makes it that much more exciting. I mean, if memories that stick with me is, a minute left in the game, you're up by a goal, and it's your time to sort of hunker down and make that last play. That's the coolest thing in the world, to sort of have that. So definitely sort of being out on the island, but then I guess within that island, the goalie unit, my goalie unit throughout college, absolutely loved those kids. Shout out to, Omar in particular. We had this goalie who was a walk-on. I think he was the first ever. I played at Wagner on Staten Island, New York City, not a lacrosse place. This kid walked onto the team as a freshman, super raw goalie, had barely been playing, but he just had this attitude about him, this workhorse mentality, and he was incredible. By his senior year, he really was our like number 2 guy, and he would get in there and make saves that just weren't heard of, and he never complained. He would be out there getting shots late, just absolutely loved the game. So being a part of a group, like a cohesive group, like you are with your goalie unit. And, there can be competition within that unit, as there should be some healthy competition, but at the same time, like, you're on the same team. That's
Mhm.
your brother, that's your teammate. So working with them every single day too was my favorite part about being in net.
Yeah, love it, man. Love it. Yeah, it's an interesting relationship. I think some goalies think maybe it's like it would be what's it called, like controversial, like you would kind of go ahead, but usually it's not the case. Like the best goalie rooms, like you guys are all, you're pushing each other, right? Like there's competition, but you're all, at the end of the day, like you're really good friends, and you all want to see the team and that group succeed.
Exactly. And that's what, that's what you're going to see, in the NFL too. The best QB rooms are going to be the QB rooms
Yeah.
where there's, there has to be competition, as there should be on any position on the field, but you got to work together at the end of the day. Like and because especially, if you're the number 2 guy, you never know. It might be your time to step up. And so the way that you would want that guy, supporting you, if you got in there, you got to support them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to one goalie, I think it was Josh Kirsten, and he said like his worst season was the one where like he was like the clear starter. He was the clear number 1, and like the number 2 guy was like way below, right? And when you have that difference, that discrepancy in between the 2 goalies, all of a sudden up here you're like, oh, you know what? Like I don't need to see another half hour of shots after practice. Like, you can kind of take the foot off the gas, and that's not good for anybody, right?
Get a little complacent. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Kind of want someone sort of nibbling at your heels a bit, pushing you.
Yeah. Did you growing up, did you ever play any individual sports like tennis or wrestling or anything like that?
I was
Golf?
growing up, I was a big hockey, lacrosse guy were my 2 sports.
Okay.
But so like the one individual thing I would do wasn't necessarily like competition, but I grew up, spending my summers down the shore. So like surfing, skimboarding was my like little solo thing that I would do. And that was just the best way to kind of get your mind away from things. And um, the surfing for people that aren't familiar with skimboarding, it's a sport similar to surfing, but you actually start up on the beach and you kind of run out into the wave and ride it back. And I fell in love with that growing up, and just sort of being out in the ocean, respecting the ocean. You learn a lot of lessons being out there, the way that you got to sort of respect the waves and respect the pull of the water. And so that was my little way to mentally clear. And I did play tennis growing up. I love tennis. I think that there's a lot that'll come out of playing tennis and something like that. Hand-eye coordination wise, like very fast movement on your feet back and forth. So if you can be playing tennis in your off season too, I would definitely recommend that.
Same.
And now, I'm like any other mid-20s guy now. I guess I golf a little bit. Still not too good at golfing, but I get out there. I get out there every so often. That's a mentally challenging sport for sure.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's, when you were talking about the things you liked about lacrosse goalie, a lot of it, I think relates to playing an individual sport, or even like you said, surfing or skimboarding, where it's just you, right? And that if you don't put in the work, like you're the only one to blame, right? And so I think a lot of that attracts a lot of lacrosse goalies, and that like I want that spotlight because I know like it's on me. And yeah, it's a pressure packed position, as playing tennis or playing golf, right? It's just there's a lot of pressure on that one person because you can't share it with the team in a way. But yeah, I think a lot of that mentally relates to the position of goalie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it. It's almost that idea of like, even if you might not be the best man for the job, like you still want to be the one to do it. Like why would you want anybody else to kind of be in that? Like you want to put yourself in that position to be the one to sort of make the play at the end of the game. And so allowing that and kind of having that mentality of like, this is what I want to do, not shying away from that moment. That's what sports is all about, really. Just being the one to make that last play. Even if it happens once in your career, you make that one game winning save once, that's something that's going to stick with you.
For sure. Yeah. I still remember a handful of saves from college. And then now we're talking, I graduated 2003. So we're talking almost 20 years ago. And I'm like so vividly, like I remember it so vividly, and even games, right? I mean, I'm sure you remember some as well. I wanted to talk before we hit on that. I want to talk about that surfing thing. Cause I did I'm living in Argentina at the moment. I did a surf camp over in Brazil, and it was hard. Like I had never done it before. And it is hard, but talk to me a little bit more about like, the surfing, and if that, brought anything to your goalie game, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for what it is for me more than anything was I was big on, after the season in college, season ends, I put my stick down for a while.
Yeah.
I would give myself like you're playing, if you're playing in college, if you're playing Division 1 in particular, like you're playing, pretty much 6 days a week from the time you get on campus in September to the time that your season ends, in May or whenever it is going to be for your team. And it's a long time to be playing sort of one sport. And so for me, it was always really important to kind of take that little break from the game, sort of reset myself, put the stick down. I'm going to have time to get back and work before the next fall ball comes around, but enjoying other things besides the sport,
Yeah.
having hobbies is huge. Having just hobbies that you get to do every single day that you genuinely love doing for no other reason than it's enjoyable for yourself. That's why for me, like the surfing, the skateboarding, it wasn't like a competition thing for me. It was very much just sort of something I enjoyed. Kind of get into that flow state of you're just out there, it's you with the ocean, sort of again, kind of on an island. No one else can really help you. When you're surfing, you're doing it on your own. When you're skateboarding, you're doing it on your own. And so sort of just allowing yourself to enjoy things outside of the sport, I think is huge. I know the Wagner goalie right now, Danny Brady, absolute stud. That kid he's something special. I think he put up like a 59%, 60% save percentage last year. And I remember once I had messaged him after. I was like, great season. I hope you take a little break for yourself because you've earned it. And I think that's it's a big thing to do, is sort of take that time to enjoy things outside of the sport.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the challenges I've had with Lax Goalie Rat is that like I totally agree with that. Like you should 100% take a break, right? And kind of put this down. But I do this full time, so I'm like I can't take a break.
Yeah, a little different.
Yeah.
Little different.
So I'm like it's like a challenge that I juggle with as well. But there's certain people that still want to, even if they're not taking shots, they still want to like
Oh yeah.
learn virtually. So that's how I've kind
Absolutely.
of
And no, and I
justified
think
it.
that there's a difference in that too. Like obviously when the season would end or something, like PLL would come around, MLL, like would love watching that. Absolutely. It's not like I would just completely close the game out. And
Yeah.
even I would like go out and I would shoot too. Like I would go out with buddies and I would, just have like a regular stick in my hand and I would shoot. And there's still going to be a lot that comes out of helping your game just by doing that. It just doesn't, there's so many things that you can work on that are going to benefit you. That's not necessarily just being in the cage. So finding that balance and whatever works for you. Listen, that's what worked for me. Some people, if you never want to put that stick down and you want shots every single day, and that's what works for you, the more power to you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to manage the burnout, right? Like if you start to feel like, oh man, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
Then that's like, number one symptom of like, hey, you might be pushing it a little too hard. Let's put the
Absolutely.
stick in the garage, go surfing.
Yeah.
So there you go. So talk to me about your decision to go to Wagner. For those that haven't read the blog post,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No. So Wagner, I was not, I wasn't like a highly recruited guy. I was coming out of a really good high school. Trevor Baptiste was my face-off guy he was the year above me for 3 years. We had some real studs on the team. We had Trevor Baptiste, who obviously I don't think I need to give him any introduction. We had Teddy Hatfield, who went on to play at Richmond and put up fantastic numbers there. Thomas Rago went to Marist, Chris Glancy, St. John's, John McDonald, Colgate. And then in the younger years, we had Connor Morin, who went on to Notre Dame. So we had a pretty studded offensive team, which, helped me as a goalie because I was getting peppered every single day. But, I wasn't too highly recruited when that sort of time came around in my junior year. And I was talking to a handful of like D3 schools, but I really just threw out a big net. I emailed hundreds of coaches, D1, D2, D3, and we just wanted to see, who would want me to come play for their school. And that's what I really felt like with what Wagner was that they made it clear that they wanted me to come to the school. And for me, it kind of came down in the end to like Sacred Heart and Wagner. And for me, it was just, Wagner was the first team to take a chance on me and be like, we want you to come here. And that really, like, I think I'm a loyal person. And so that kind of showed me that loyalty. And, I'm a local guy. I grew up in the area of Staten Island. Wagner was only about 50 minutes from my hometown. My parents were going to come see me play. Staten Island's technically one of the boroughs of New York City. So we spent a lot of time throughout our 4 years in college exploring Manhattan. And that really excited me, that idea of getting to see the city. And I wanted to go to a smaller school. I took my education very seriously. And I thought it would be really beneficial for me to be in a classroom where I only had, 14, 15 people in a class. And I got to know every one of my professors on a very personal level, worked with them on projects outside of school. And I feel like that's what really got me to, where I am now in my professional and educational standing at this point. So that was what was big for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Excuse me. And if you look at your playing career as a goalie in Wagner, I mean, it's a nice upward trajectory, right? Like started, I think freshman year, 50%, sophomore year, 55%, junior year, 58%. Yeah. What do you attribute that to? Is it just, learning the position, experience?
Yeah. I mean, so a lot of it is like, there is going to be a big change from the high school game to the college game. For me, what I think the biggest change honestly was the time. You play, at least where I grew up, we were playing 12-minute quarters. And I feel like that's pretty national. You play like 12-minute high school quarters. And then all of a sudden you go to college, you play 15. Do the math. That's a whole extra quarter of lacrosse that you're playing when you get to college. And so that aspect of like, you're playing a good amount more, a whole 15 extra minutes was something to adjust to. And that's something that I really think I struggled with a bit in my freshman year. It's this idea of like, I have to play a good 60-minute game. Like I always tell guys, like, you don't have to play a good 60-minute game, play a bunch of good 1-minute games. If you take it in, like I have to play well for 60 minutes, that's really overwhelming. So I would start to break it down. I'm like, all right, can I just, lock it in for 2 minutes? And then after that 2 minutes, can I do another 2 minutes? Because you can't have a full good 60-minute game unless you have all these little kind of chapters along the way. Same thing as like, you can't really have a good week unless you start out with a good day. You got to stack things on top of each other. And so that was huge. And I mean, I will say, Wagner, we had an awesome defense. We really did. We, sometimes our wins and losses didn't reflect that, but every year we were in the top 15, 20 in the country for like goals against average, man down defense. We had some really fantastic players. And we ran a really tight zone, which as a goalie, like I loved. I was seeing a lot of 15-yard shots that I could track and I could get to. Yeah. And so just continuing to get all the reps and seeing it and recognize that, even my junior year, that was definitely probably like statistically my best year. There were still games in there that weren't necessarily as stellar as others. And that's all right. Like you're not going to have an amazing game every single time. It's about the next game. Then can you bounce back and have a good sort of reset?
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Yeah. It's got to be interesting. I mean, my high school had 1,800 kids, right? So, it's certainly, and so for me, like, I didn't want that experience, right? I wanted a bigger school and I ended up going to Berkeley with 30,000 kids. Right. And you certainly get like a very different experience. I mean, there was some, Chem 1A lectures that, where professor's on a microphone and there's 300 kids in the lecture, right? So it's a very different experience. And I think that, it's not to say it's right or wrong, but just keep that in mind as you're going for your process.
And for me, I came out of a high school, I had 100 kids in a grade in high school.
Yeah.
So for me, even 1,800
was big.
Kind of a step up for me. It was a big environment for me.
Yeah, I love it. The other thing that I was going to mention is I love what you said there about playing those 1-minute games, right? Because a lot of times goalies will email me or ask me or DM me and say like, my defense stinks and we're losing every game. Like, what do I do? Right. And that's the 1-minute games is like the answer, right? Like even if you're down 15-0, win that next minute.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a great point. That's a great point that you brought up. And then I was just looking at a picture. Wagner's got some real clean unis. Unis, especially the whites. The whites, right? It's got Wagner and the white text with like the black outline on the white jersey, huge numbers. Oh, I love those unis.
Listen, I'll say that we did look good. We did look good.
Look good, play good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You are now, studying, psychology and getting into that. And I would love to talk about that. Obviously as a goalie, the mental game is huge, right? It's huge. I think when we talked before, you had some very specific lessons or very specific things that you thought goalies should embrace. Could we chat about that?
Yeah. I mean, to give a background to the followers out there, I can also say this too, like, lacrosse, there is sort of like this culture, and you'll probably see on a lacrosse team, 80% of guys are going to go into like the business world. And, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just like, that tends to be kind of the trajectory of a lot of people. And so I like to kind of talk to kids I coach with that, there's a lot of options out there of what you can do. So I studied psychology in undergrad, and then I went on to do a master's program in mental health counseling. So was a therapist, and had some really cool experiences being a therapist too. I worked at a prison for a year, which I
Wow.
was absolutely loved. I worked at a prison for a year, worked at a hospital. And then after getting that, I got my license. I decided I wanted to continue with school. So I'm pursuing a PhD in clinical psychology right now, which is pretty research heavy focused. But I love it. Psychology has always been a passion of mine. I knew I wanted to study psych before I even got to college. I was very set on going into that from the beginning. And there is, there's a ton of sort of mental lessons, because, kids these days are tasked with a lot of challenges mentally. This is a
Mhm.
whole new world we're living in. I
Mhm.
was really growing up on the tail end, kind of, or on the front end, I guess you could say, like social media, where, Instagram was around, but it wasn't this thing where people were making like careers out of. And so now, kids are growing up with all these added pressures of kind of making sure that their lives appear a certain way. And it can be a lot for some people. And so kind of taking that all into account, that, the only person that really knows about your life is yourself. And to talk to people if you're feeling down, and we're going to have bad days. Everybody's going to have bad days, and sort of recognizing that. But for me, I think the biggest thing when talking with goalies and like the mental side of it is, we tend to put things into like buckets, like one end of the spectrum or the other. It was a good game, it was a bad game.
Mhm.
We won, we lost. In reality, like, there are very few absolutes in this world. Very few things are one way or another.
Mhm.
Most things have, like, there can be two sort of opposing truths that are both true at the same time. Like, you can have, a rough game and your team could still win. You
Right.
could lose a game and you had a fantastic game. You could have a game where you did a really good job saving the ball and your clearing was a little bit off. And we just tend to sort of group everything together instead of sort of picking out the details. And so sort of balancing that out of like, all right, when I look back on the game, what did I do well? What can I improve on? Because it's not just this overarching sort of theme. And so that's what we do. Like in practice too, it's like, all right, what do you want to work on today? Like, what's the thing? Like, be as specific as possible too. Is it like a low stick side save? I don't know why, for me, that was always my toughest spot. I think there's always that preaching of off stick hip is the hard spot. I almost feel like that's pretty natural, kind of doing that. For me, it was that like low stick side. It's so awkward because you're just sort of like jabbing at it.
Mm.
Um, and it was always tough for me. So that was the thing, like working on the things that you can work on. Um, and going away from the absolutes. And then another thing that was big for me was this idea of, we put so much pressure on ourselves that we have to save the ball. We have to save the ball. And like when you say that out, it's like, yeah, like of course you're a goal, you have to save the ball. I sort of switched my mentality to, it's not that I have to save the ball. The shooter has to score on me. It's not this like automatic thing that he shoots the ball, like it's gonna go in and I have to do something about it. Like, no, a lot of times, honestly, like you're gonna get hit. They're gonna miss the net. Like, you don't always have to put that on, like, I have to do this. Like, the shooter has to do just as much as you do as well. And
Mm.
so sometimes we almost look at shooters like these robots that they're just going to do it perfectly. And we're the only ones that have this sort of mental game to it and stuff. So like you can start to sort of toy around with that idea of like, hey, they got to do it right too. Same way I have to do it right, they have to do it right as well. So let's see if they can do it. And then if they
Yeah.
can, I'll just match them.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's almost like then if they shoot wide, like as a goalie, I celebrate, right? Because
Oh,
like,
I have something great that I will say my coach in college didn't love this, but my goalie unit, we did. Every time a ball hit the post, we would all scream positional save, because it's
right.
like, it's a positional save. We were in the right position. They had nowhere to go with it. Like, nope, we would always say it. Positional saves, big thing. Take those posts as a save for yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, yeah, great lessons right there. What else?
Yeah, no. So other things too, like I think we put a lot of emphasis on the saving part of it. And I think that we do at times go away from the clearing aspect of it, which truly is, like, you can make an argument it's just as important as the saving side of it, because you can make 30 saves a game. If you can't get that ball across the 50, then it's pretty much useless.
Oh yeah.
So making sure that you're being just as sharp with your approach to clears. And what I see a lot, and I think a lot of it does come from the mental side of it, is goalies especially with young ones, you see them kind of pushing the ball. Like when they're throwing it, they kind of push their hands, and you see that end up with a lot of like short passes. So making sure that you get that sort of that consistency of like, you got to snap that ball off. We always say like, it's better to overthrow a guy than underthrow somebody. You overthrow it, it doesn't work out, it kind of just sails and it goes out the other side. You get a little bit of time. You underthrow it, there can be this sort of like jumble, and then it's hectic. And so you kind of want to overthrow things a little bit more. So getting that very like mental side of it of like, all right, your job's not done when you save that ball. Be happy with yourself. You made the save, fantastic job. Job is halfway over. Now you gotta get up, you gotta scan the field. It's always a test. Like I'm like, if somebody comes down and takes a shot, where's the first place you're supposed to look? And I feel like goalies give a ton of different answers. I always preach, someone comes down, takes a shot, first place you look is where the shot came from.
Yeah.
That is instantly where you should look, because it's super tough for a shooter to come down an alley, take a shot, watch the ball go into your stick, stop, and then catch up with the man. So being there and sort of being sharp with that and knowing sort of your reads and how to get the ball off is huge. And then the other mental side of it too, and it's kind of like a leadership thing, is as a goalie, you are a leader. Even if you don't have a C attached to your name, a captain, doesn't matter. You're in charge of that defense in a lot of ways. And so one thing that bothers me is when I watch some young goalies, it's like, they get scored on and they yell at the defense. There's a way to do it. There's a way to sort of get on your guy, motivate them, be like, this was your slide. You kind of got beat. That's all right. Yelling, probably not going to do it. You're a team. You want to sort of have control of that defense. You want to have control of the guys around you. And so learning how to talk to your defense, learning how to motivate them. Every person's going to also respond differently. So you got to take the time to learn who is in front of you, because, those guys are protecting you. So why are we going to sort of, go after them?
Right.
Some guys might respond a little bit better to some, tough love. Other guys might respond better to sort of just sitting there and talking with them. And so figuring out what you need to do for your defense to sort of have control of that room, so that you have not only confidence in them, but they have confidence in you. Mm-hmm. It's got to be a give and take. It's not one way or the other.
Yeah. And I think that trust has to be earned there too. I don't think like, Matt Sefick can show up at Wagner as a freshman and start being like, barking out orders, right? And getting expletives and getting in someone's face and trying to give them that tough love, because you haven't built up that respect, right? Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Tom Brady's been in the league, he's the GOAT. He can give his offensive linemen a little bit of, tough love, because like he's earned that and he's built up that trust. And like, so, you got to kind of build up that trust before you do that.
There's time and place for everything. And it also goes back to that absolute. It's not about every single time yelling at someone. It's also not about never yelling at someone. It's about, being able to read a room, essentially. Being able to read a room, being able to read the situation, read the person that you're talking to, and knowing sort of what you got to do. Like you have to be very in tune with your defense and how you're going to be sort of responding. And like, I'll say, like, I wasn't necessarily the best IQ person in the sense of like, I knew how defenses operate. I've met some goalies that just like know every intricate part of the defense. And it's amazing to sort of watch their mind work. That was never really me. And like, I kind of knew that I was never going to be necessarily like the general of that, but I was definitely going to be the guy who's going to sort of be there to pick my guy up. I'm going to be there to sometimes, take responsibility. If something goes in, be like, that one's on me, and sort of washing it off. I always forget. I forget what goalie it was. It was a hockey goalie. He would always turn around after every goalie gave up and squirt some water into the air, and he'd watch the little. He would like focus on one drop of water and follow it the whole way down, and he would only allow himself to think about that goal for that time that water droplet was going down. The second it hit, it's done. It's over. Go back to it. Next play. Because different than hockey and lacrosse goalie too is in hockey there's shutouts. In lacrosse, I played goalie for 18 years, and I don't think I ever had a shutout. that doesn't happen. So don't go in with the expectation that you're gonna have a shutout, but understand that you're gonna have to learn how to deal with giving up goals.
Yeah, I mean, in ice hockey, and same thing with like a soccer goalie, it's even more like you have to have a better reset routine, because those goals are devastating, right? Yeah. Like, you only give up a couple in a game, and that's a horrible game. But still, it's the same lessons apply to lacrosse goalies, because you got to be able to just reset. And I love that little, focus on the water, the droplet. That's the only time I'm going to give myself to think about that play, and then let's move on.
Yeah.
A lot of great stuff you just said there. I was kind of furiously taking notes here. So the clearing game, I 100% agree, right? Like it's even more important because like a blown clear is just such a momentum killer. And so, yeah, I mean, not only do you got to practice those saves, and you got to be comfortable with that stick and be able to throw beautiful outlets and be able to dodge if you need to. So I love that you emphasize that point.
Yeah, get your sticks right. Find someone that you trust. If you don't string sticks yourself, I have never once in my life even attempted to string a stick. It was not going to be my thing. I found someone that did it well for me, and I, bless him, Coach Formicelli. He was a guy that he coached me in high school, and he would string all my sticks, and guy was fantastic at it. So find someone that you trust, get that stick dialed in. Because yeah, like you said, it's a huge momentum killer, but also when you see it on the other side, enormous momentum boost for the other team. Like you see guys get up when they, are able to stop a clear. So you want to have that on point.
Yeah. Love it. What would you say to a young goalie who tends to get in their head during a game, right? Like not present, not focused on the game. They're just in their head. What would you say to that young goalie?
Mindfulness techniques. So this is something that I teach as a therapist. Is you can do something called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique, where it's you sort of find yourself maybe fading a little bit and you're not as present with the game. You want to sort of ground yourself. It's like a grounding technique. So find 5 things. When the ball's on the other side, what are 5 things that you can just look at and identify? Like you can look out and be like, I can see, I could see Andrew Stralin down on the other side of the field. I could see Spencer. I could see my parents in the crowd. I can see the goalpost on the far side, and I could see a tree here. 5 things that are just actively around you. Then it's like, what are 4 things that I can touch? Grab your post. You grab your post, grab your stick, feel the tape on your stick. Notice, sort of what your feet feel like in your cleats. Touch your mouth guard. You touch 4 things. Then, what are 3 things that you can hear? What are 3 things you can hear around you? Like, oh, okay, like I can hear the whistle of the ref. I can hear my coach yelling, and I could hit the post again with my stick, and I can hear that sort of ring. And then the other 2 get a little bit more challenging, like 2 things that you can smell. What does like the air smell like that day? It's gonna, a lacrosse game in February is gonna smell a lot different than a lacrosse game in May. I know that sounds a little peculiar, but what can you sort of pick up? And then if it really comes down to it, take a whiff of your jersey. Was that thing washed? Was it not washed? What does that smell like? And then the last one is one thing that you can taste. So, if you have water with you, here's a little secret of my game. I had a bottle of Dr. Pepper on the sideline for every lacrosse game I played. I would keep it on the sideline. And again, my coach didn't love the look of having a Dr. Pepper bottle on the sideline. So I had a designated Powerade squirt bottle that was mine, and we'd put a little piece of tape on it so that people knew that wasn't water, that was soda in there. So I don't know what that was. I like drinking soda, and I recently found out that Alexander Ovechkin does the same thing. So I don't want to take credit for what Ovechkin did, but clearly it was some goalie out in Wagner that he was inspired by to drink Dr. Pepper during games.
So what was it like? You just that was a superstition?
I don't know. It's like, I mean, definitely I was a superstitious person. I will say I was definitely superstitious. I would, touch the pipes the exact same way. I would stand in the same place for the national anthem. I had my whole little routine before games that I would go through, definitely superstition. And, listen, I know it's unhealthy. I like soda. So it was just also kind of like a thing for me in the intensity of a game. You get something that you kind of enjoy, the athletes do a lot of weird things like that. I know you had Marshawn Lynch who used to eat Skittles at halftime, just, and I know for him, it was probably like the sugar thing, but I'd also be hard pressed to say it's not just because, you like Skittles and you want something just a little, almost kind of takes you away from the game a little bit and allows you to be personal for you. So that was the thing. You work on the 5-4-3-2-1 thing, find little things that work for you, little quirks, and run with them. It became an ongoing joke that, I had that bottle of soda on the sideline.
Yeah. I love it. That's great technique. I've never heard that before. 5-4-3-2-1. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
You can always smell those gloves. You know,
Yes,
I mean, those
you definitely
gloves,
smell
that's
the
going to have the
gloves.
same stank every
Yeah,
single February or May, right?
you can definitely smell the gloves. Those are tough.
Yeah, there's such a particular funk about lacrosse equipment in general, right? Like that sweat, but oh man, it's never forget that smell.
Yeah. And then, to your question too, I mean, the other thing I was kind of talking about it being a grounding technique, and that's what it is. Sometimes in life, not only like being on the field, just in life in general, like oftentimes we're so worried about the next thing that we got to do, the next place that we got to be, that we often don't just think about, where our feet are in the world. Like, where are your feet right now? If you're on the field, like your feet are planted on that turf, you're on a field somewhere, whether it be in a college stadium or you're out in some fall ball tournament in the middle of Western Mass or Western Maryland on some patchy grass, like find where your feet are, because that's it. In that moment, that's where you are. It's not about where you were, 2 days ago. It's not about where you're going to be 2 days from now. That's where you are, and sort of running with that. And I got to say, I chalk a lot of that up to an individual I worked with when I was working at the prison. It was when I was doing therapy at a prison, and I had a guy who, been doing years at that time, and he became a pretty model inmate. Guy got college degrees. He became, a teacher within the institute, and it was like, what changed for you? And he's like, I just sort of realized that this is where my feet were, and nothing, no matter how much I said I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't have done that. That didn't matter at that moment, because that's where he was, and he had to sort of make a life for himself where he was, and it stuck with me. So we oftentimes just get ahead of ourselves, and forget to sort of look around and take in where we are. Oftentimes we're exactly where we wanted to be 5 years ago, and yet right now we're focused on where we want to be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So allowing yourself to sort of take in those moments.
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. Great advice. Great advice, right? Yeah, and so much of the mental game can come back to, you know, those lessons that you said, like being present and then just enjoying, just having fun, enjoying what you're
Yeah.
doing out there. And also like, being like grateful, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't play lacrosse anymore, but you got, a lot of people listening to this have a whole, I mean, I could, but like not
I know
not
what you mean.
like competitively with a club or a college, right? But you got that opportunity still, and that's amazing, right? And so enjoy that opportunity while you got it.
Yeah. And also, and you know what, and be realistic with yourself too. I'm not going to sit here and say that every moment that I played in college was glorious and I loved it. Believe it or not, waking up at 5 a.m. in January to walk out to a freezing cold field wasn't exactly the most fun thing in the world.
Right.
But, it was still just about like, all right, well, this kind of stinks, but I'm out here with my 40 best friends. I get to kind of take it in and finding those little silver linings, and allowing yourself to sort of have days would be like, like it's cold. Like, I don't want to be out here, but then be like, all right, but you know what? I am, I am out here. So what am I going to do about that now? I'm big, like I recommend getting rid of the word like should and shouldn't from your vocabulary. Should and shouldn'ts can be detrimental. I should have done this. I should have done that. I shouldn't have done this. All it does is kind of keep you in a place that you aren't. Like, I should have made this save. Okay, but you didn't make that save. So what are we going to do now? Are we going to harp on the fact that we didn't make that save, or are we going to be like, all right, it already happened. There's literally nothing you can do to change what's already happened. What are we going to do now? If we constantly just focus on what could have been, we're never going to focus on what's happening right now.
Yeah, love it. Strong stuff. Strong stuff. When a goalie is going through like a slump, bad stretch of games, or maybe even a bad stretch of practices, right? I'm sure you've had that in your career. Is that to you? Is that more of a mental thing or a physical thing, or how do you recommend goalies get out of those slumps?
Listen, I mean, I think a lot of it is more mental than anything, but I also think that it's this idea of like, that's going to happen. That is a part of playing sports.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to be at your top all the time. You're going to have stretches where it's not working as well. And so like, you could kind of go at it in like two ways. You could either like really hunker down and be like, all right, what am I going to do to fix it? Or you almost kind of ride the wave a little bit and just be like, this is here. Like, you almost recognize that like, this isn't going to be forever. Like, you're going to have just bad games. I know when I was a freshman in high school, I had a very bad stretch of games. I was a starter and I got pulled. It was the first and only time in my career I ever really got pulled for like games. And it was like devastating to me. And I took that time as like, all right, like I don't want this to happen again. Like, what can I do? And I really went to the backyard, had like my dad shoot on me, I'd film it and really figured it out. And then in college, my senior year, I had a really great junior year, senior year. I had a great first game. And then I had this little stretch sort of in the beginning where I was really just playing like kind of like 50% ball. And it's not what I expected of myself. And my coach was kind of like, I remember he called me, he's like, hey man, like just want to check in, like what's going on. Um, and I kind of just reminded myself of like, I know what I'm capable of doing. I'm fully aware of like what I'm able to do, and I'm not doing that right now. I still have that in me. I didn't just lose it. It didn't just go anywhere. It's still there. So like, let's just bring that back out. We start to, maybe tighten the grip on our stick a little bit more. We start to I think that's when we really get into that mentality I was talking about before, but like, you have to save the ball. And then we start to get away from that. Like, all right, no, go back to what's worked for you in the past. Go back to the little things. I was also like big on, warm-up shots. I don't like getting peppered in warm-ups. I want like beach balls. I want just soft lobs to me. So get out there, get some soft shots, find yourself again a little bit, get that feeling of making saves back into you, and recognize that, bad stretches are pretty much inevitable. And you're going to work through it. They're going to happen. And in every aspect of your life, you're going to have little slumps.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Yeah. When you're in a slump, it feels like it'll never end. Right. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. Right. Yeah. It's like everything. And even, we could be talking about slump in lacrosse, or just like a slump in life. Right. Or like a bad, mental health situation. When you're in it, it's so real, and it's so like, there's no way I'm ever getting out of this. But, keeping that big perspective, like you said, of like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like, you are where you are for a reason. You're a good goalie. You're a good player. Like, you're going to get out of this.
Yeah.
I think holding that mentality, I think really, it's hard. It's so hard. Because like I said, it's
extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult. You definitely get that tunnel vision. And just, again, kind of reminding yourself of like, all right. And then, I also say like, that's also a great time to sort of, not, if you're in the middle of the season, obviously you can't step away from the game, but like, take a day and go do something. Like, I'm a big hiker. Like, go take a day, go for a hike, clear your head, leave your phone behind, just enjoy something, and then sort of give that as like a reset. We're just, and whatever it is that your hobby is, like, go do it.
Love that, man. Love that. You got to come visit me down in Argentina. We'll go hiking in Patagonia.
I know.
Some of the most amazing hiking I've ever done.
Going down to Patagonia. My brother's getting married, and he and his fiance just decided for their honeymoon they're doing Patagonia. And I'm like, I can't wait to go. I can't wait to join you too.
All right. If you want any tips, hit me up. I've been 3 times now. Every friend that comes to visit me down here is like, let's go to Patagonia. I'm like, hey, all right, I'm into it.
Absolutely.
All right, Matt. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This is tons of fun. Chatting goalie, chatting, the mental game. You feel like we hit it all, or there was some other points you wanted to touch on?
I mean, yeah, this was super fun. Like I said in the beginning, I love this platform. I love that what you've been doing for this sport, bringing this sort of goalie community together. It's cool when I go onto your Instagram page and I got a bunch of people that I'm friends with that I follow that follow you too, and it's become this whole little community of goalies. And just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great thing for this sport. You're doing a great thing for this job in particular. So going to keep following along with it. I'm excited to watch the seasons I've been keeping up with fall ball and stuff, and excited to watch some of these new generation of goalies. I mean, some of these guys are studs. I know that you had, what was his name? Brett Dobson. That kid is, I'll recommend to any young goalie, watch that kid play. Oh my gosh. Him and Kirst, those kids are something special. Yeah. And so if you want to try and emulate your game after anybody, those guys, what I say about whenever I would watch Dobson is that is the most like patient goalie with just the quickest reaction in the world. Like, he makes no false movements before shots and then just is after everything. I love your little compilation videos of the saves. And he had that one game against, like, who was it again? He had something like
Marist.
21 saves and like 5 goals against. I'm just like, that's almost statistically impossible.
No, it was I know exactly what one you're talking about. Oh man, the name of the game escapes me. But the other, it was Monmouth. It was Monmouth because the other goalie had like 17 saves too.
Yeah, I remember it was just. I'm like, this like statistically should never happen. And
Yeah.
yet, like, they're doing it. And he was doing it consistently. He was doing
Yeah.
it on a consistent basis.
Oh, he balled out last year. He's one of my sponsored athletes.
Yeah.
And so I got to know him really well. And he's just awesome. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great to watch kind of his season. And yeah, that Brett Dobson, St. Bonaventure versus Noah Lothe, Monmouth. Definitely
Yeah.
check out that save edit if you like goalies.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll obviously I'll have to plug my boys over at Wagner, you know. Danny Brady, I think he is one of the most underrated goalies in the country. Just does not get that recognition. I mean, that kid, like I said, I think he put up like a 59% save percentage last year, getting
Yeah.
peppered in. He is he's fast, he's athletic. So another goalie, you know, if your young goalies are out there, like, look out for this guy. He's something special, and he's gonna. I see no signs of him slowing up anytime soon. So check out Wagner, check out the check. I know they're in the MAC now, so it'll be interesting to see how the MAC plays out this year.
In the
And
MAC. Yeah. Someone just
yep.
left them. I think St. Bonaventure left the MAC, didn't they? Or
Yeah, the
someone
NEC
did.
folded. The NEC
Oh,
is no
okay.
longer a conference for lacrosse. So a bunch of them, like, I think like Sacred Heart and Wagner and maybe LIU or something went over to the MAC. So that should be a pretty entertaining conference.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be watching. Yeah, the MAC last year had like phenomenal goalies. And I don't know if you watched any of the games, but like the announcers that they get are like, they're so good. And you can kind of hear it in the save edits.
They had Jules Hedenberg on for the championship. I coached with Jules for a few summers. He's a great guy. Really knows the sport well. And so I'm happy to see him up in the broadcast booth. I hope he continues doing that. They were doing very good job, you know, getting the brand recognition of MAC lacrosse out there. So excited to watch my guys join up and see how they do, see how they fare.
Yeah, there you go. Like I forget the play-by-play guy, his name, but like he commented on the video because like a lot of people were saying like, oh, the play-by-play guy is amazing. Like he's so good. That's one of my huge pet peeves because I watch a lot of lacrosse and a lot of times like announcers won't even like acknowledge a save by a goalie. Like how could you not do that?
That's when you know they're just like pulling in a basketball announcer and saying, "Here you go." Trying to
like if you're the play-by-play guy, like you have to do I don't know. And the way he does it is more like ice hockey style, like you know.
No, I know exactly who you're talking about. He did a fantastic job. He was definitely one of the bright spots of college lacrosse. Again, another unsung hero. Hopefully, he gets a little bit more recognition in this season.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, I'll do some Wagner save edits and Danny Brady save edits this upcoming season.
Absolutely, looking forward to them.
All right, Matt. Good luck with the your doctorate. Should we call you Dr. Matt Sefick?
No, I can't go by that yet. In a couple of years, I'll let you know when you can.
All right. Let me know, and then we'll go back and update all the posts. Right, the doctor. Perfect. This was written by the doctor.
Have a good one. Thank you.
All right, Matt. Thank you so much. If you had to leave the goalies out there with a final piece of advice, what would that be?
Ooh, final piece of advice. Oh man, put it on the spot. Final piece of advice. I feel like it's gonna be so cheesy, but it is. It's again like just try and find some fun in it. Try and find some fun in the game. Enjoy yourselves. Don't take it too seriously at the end of the day, too. This is like, it is a job, but at the same time, this is something that you loved. At one point in your life, you fell in love with the sport. So try and find that sort of like those roots again if you ever feel yourself getting burnt out. And take care of yourselves. I always loved what my coach told us, Matt Posque told us at the end of practices. He would always say, he'd finish it off with take care of yourselves, take care of each other. So I feel like that would be it. You know, take care of yourselves, do what you got to do for yourself, and then watch out for your friends, your family, the people around you as well. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other.
Well said, Matt. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a good one.